in 1980, I went to Mr. Westbrook because he was in Shafter and a couple of streets down, because I had seen that he had been doing woodworking in his garage. And I said, I've got a job at a school, and I need a podium, and they won't give me one. And I wanted to buy a really expensive one, and they laughed at me. The first of many instances of them laughing at me. And so I said, here, it's kind of a picture, and I showed him a yearbook picture of a high school podium, and he built this for me. And so this has been around and was in my classroom until I retired, and I took the posters off the front. I didn't think you needed to have a poster of somebody throwing a sword at somebody saying we should follow, instructions. And but it's still holding up a lot better than me. And so there's a story there somewhere about Mr. Westbrook builds better than my parents did. We talk so often about this idea of sacrifice of Jesus, as we should, right? Because what he did was save us from our sins. Well, let me put the question a little different, if I may, as we start this morning, this evening, this afternoon. You're going to bear with me, I hope, because I'm really, right now, things are spinning, okay? And you guys look really interesting from my point of view. Let me go back a step. Thank you, elders, for allowing me 5 weeks to do this. I asked them for a short period of time because I wasn't sure whether I physically could do a 10-week. And I just have a problem with doing it 2 or 3 weeks and then going, okay, I'll be gone for the next 4 or 5 weeks and, get a sub. I didn't want to do that. Thank you, Blake, because he especially has something he's going to have to do 5 weeks after. And, the problem with 5 weeks is that you don't have any time to fool around. Let's face it, a whole class period, a whole quarter, you have something where you have some time. You have some time to ramble. You don't have time to ramble in 5. And Blake took that on, and I really do appreciate that so much. I am not going to ramble. I'm just going to go through, and at the end of 5 weeks, I'm just going to head out the door, and all be done. I've learned from Dave there last time. What's so terrible that it requires the Son of God's death? How about this? If you ask someone who is not religious, has no background in religion, let's stop and think about that one more time, because that's what we're getting into. We're getting into a world where, let's face it, in the 1950s and 60s, 70s and 80s, you talk to somebody and they go, yeah, I'm a Baptist. Oh, I need to argue about Baptist doctrine. Oh, I'm a Mennonite here in Bakersfield Shafter. Oh, I need to know something about Minnow. And that was a guy's name. All right? All those kind of things. Now you get people that, they may say, well, even the people that said, I didn't have a religious background. Well, then it turns out, well, no, my mom. No, I'm not really religious. I'm Baptist, though, because my parents were Baptist. They don't have that anymore. You ask someone, what's so destructive that only God's sacrifice could stop it? And then you tell them the answer, the 3-letter answer, and they don't have a clue as to what you're talking about. Because they don't know what sin is. And the question is, do we? So, nothing profound this next 5 weeks. We're simply going to look at what is so destructive. Except I did have to have a title slide. So, ask this. And there's a particular reason I'm using the word good there. Why did the good man have to die? Actually, if I had a title and I wanted the full title, it would be, why did the only good man have to die? We understand the power of sin. We want to understand, this is our goals, to understand the power of sin that we may be able to give those who do not understand a reason to believe. You have to pile up facts. You have to tell the truth. You have to give them reasons. But you can't stop there. If you really feel that you can take a person And you can use every logical statement in the world, every truthful statement in the world, and you can pile them high and deep and build a wall and then say, look at that, and they'll say, wow, I'm going to do this. Then why is it people still smoke cigarettes? Or my favorite example, and some of you may understand this, why do some people still buy timeshares? I got a couple of you on that one. We do things that aren't reasonable. There's a story that I read one time about a timeshare. A guy he found himself in a meeting. You guys know what a timeshare is. It's basically something you don't want to get into financially, but he had a list of reasons, and he starts explaining to the people, and finally one guy nudges the other and says, hey, let's get away before this guy talks us out of buying something. Let's go get it. Isn't that the case? That people really are? So there has to be something. There has to be some kind of persuasion involved. We want to be able to clearly and simply explain to anyone what sin is, its effects on us and the world, and why only divine help could set us free. What is it? Now, don't make me wave my fingers. Do I need to bring that detention pad out? I haven't used it in about 10 years, actually. Okay? It's an elephant. Those are elephant legs. Don't you have a table, some of you, that kind of look like that? Remember those? Yeah. Oh, well, I knew you were going to say hippo. That's why number 2 comes along. Now what is it? It's an elephant. Now what is it? It's an elephant. What's your point? More than one thing can be true at a time. And it's a really important point when we study the Bible. No, I'm not saying more than one thing that's contrary to each other can be true at a time. That's not true. But more than one thing can be true at a time. How many times have we been in a class and we've done something in our study and something is said in a certain way, and so it's not the way that we have learned it, so therefore, unless we say it's said that way, it's not official. Is the trunk of the elephant part of the elephant? Yeah. Is the ears part of the elephant? Yeah. I didn't say it was all of the elephant. I said part of. Is the whatever I had up, the feet part of the elephant? Yes. So keep that in mind, if you would, as we go through these studies, that more than one thing can be true at a time. Because I'll get to it in just a second. I said I was going to follow here. I think it's important to always use family circle in every class that you possibly can. Here's Billy, a small bottle of vanilla extract, and I need it right away, and there goes Billy. And that's what happens when you start jumping on every little thing as you study something. Isn't that true? Sometimes we call it a rabbit hole. Sometimes we call it something else. It catches our interest, and then we're just off and away. It's one of the tough things that having 5 weeks to teach a class, because there's a tendency for teachers to get up on something, and even though it's not in their paper, and they'll start rambling on about it, and then pretty soon they catch themselves going, oh. So my point is this: when we start talking about sin, we need to make it as simple as we can and not jump around with people. By the way, when you talk to someone who is not a Christian, how many times have you used the word atonement? Propitiation? How about sacrifice? Do they really know what a sacrifice is? My favorite example is this, and I know it's an extreme, but I use it so you will think about it. In the New Testament, it says that Paul was stoned. I've used this before, that Paul was stoned. I would tell you that if you're under 40, that has a different meaning. And I would say that for most of you, that's probably the first thing that you think of. It's not having rocks thrown at you. You say, that's silly. Not to someone who has no background at all. So when we talk about sin, we need to talk about simple things. So we start with this. Sin is, you go, there's no way I'm saying anything after all that. It makes point. Here's what I was hoping someone would go is, sin is bad. What's the opposite of bad? Good. Well, what is bad? Well, it's the opposite of good. That's true. Sin is, in 1 John it tells us what? Sin is the transgression of law. And that's looking at the elephant in a certain case. And it's a good one. Is it true? Yes, it is. But are there other definitions? Are there other explanations of sin within the Bible? Is sin mentioned only in 1 John 3? Is it 1 John 2 or 3? I can't, 3. Is sin mentioned anywhere else in the Bible? Yeah. So we need to look at those. And we start with the beginning. A good way to start is simply looking at the book of Genesis. A lot is going on in the first chapters of Genesis. However, they raise so many questions about the creation of the universe, the earth, and people that it becomes easy to become sidetracked and overlook a few details. One of those is the choice of words that are used. The word good is used 6 times in the first chapter of Genesis. You know that. You've read over it before. And it's one of those words we'll go, well, everybody knows what good is. Really? Is your definition of good my definition of good? How many of you think broccoli is good? Kinda now. How many of you think, well, whatever, you see my point? There's going to be something else that you don't like that I think is good. Our definitions aren't the same. The word good, the way it's used there, means having the qualities required for a particular role. That's not very clear. But here's what I want us to take out of this evening as we look at this class. Good is used throughout the Bible is not talking about an emotional feeling. It's talking about the qualities required for a particular role. Think about that for a second. Some of you have an old car, right, that you use just to get to work. It's been a good car. It gets me where I need to go. Is it a good car compared to other things? No. But does it meet the job that it's been asked to do, get you to work and back? Yes. So therefore, it's a good car. Think about how that word good is used throughout the Bible. And then think of it as when something was good in the in Genesis rather, it means that it was capable of completing the job that it was asked to do. But even then it will always, sometimes the word good can be used as a feeling of satisfaction or desire, but even then it will always spring from believing that whatever is described contains the qualities needed to successfully complete its objective. The young man looks at the girl and says, she's good looking. In a very scientific, very distracted way, you say, well, it meets the needs of you see what I'm getting at? Broccoli is good. It meets my needs for what I'm looking for at that time. We do know that it's not within the New Testament, right? But it's in our subheadings. Nowhere in the Bible does the Word of God actually say the term Good Samaritan. But it's our subheading, so I stole the subheading from here, and I asked this question: why was he a Good Samaritan? As we think, go ahead, Rich. He did what was good, which was, 2 can play this game. See, we're going to ask each other questions back and forth. Well, what was it that he did that was good? Yeah, because the original question, remember context always counts on these things. Context is, hey, what do I need to be a good, what is this about being a neighbor? Who's my neighbor? Well, this guy was a neighbor. Why? Because he did what God asked him to do. There's 2 rules. There's 2 rules in all of it. Love God, keep His commandments, and that's the second one. When you do that, you're doing good. He's the Good Samaritan. And then there's an account in Mark that I always found interesting. when I started thinking about this. He's setting out on his journey. The man runs up, he kneels before him and asks him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone." Now, when I say that cake is good, that ice cream is good, who is making that decision? I am. When we decide what's right and wrong, who makes that decision? Well, with this audience, we understand it's God, right? He decides what's good. And that's what we see right here. This young man runs up, "Good teacher." Well, first of all, why are you calling me good? Because you think I'm good, or because I'm actually good because I'm teaching what God has asked me to teach? Why do you call me good? No one is good except God. If I'm teaching what God is teaching, then I'm teaching good. And of course, what is his argument there? Well, if you remember the rest of that story, the young man is upset because he's told to leave and give away his things, because he said, "I kept all the law." I wish Jeff was here from our 10 Commandments thing. Remember the first 5 or 6 of those commandments are toward God, right? The last 4 or 5, depending on how you take it, are toward each other. Well, he did the first half really good. The second half, not as well. And so think about that as we go along this week. Think about what it means to be good. When the kids would leave, we'd go, "Be good now." I didn't mean it in some spiritual way. I wished I had. I wished I'd had enough foresight too, but I just meant don't get in trouble. Do the right thing. But when you think about it, that's good. When God formed man and woman, he used a slightly different term, I believe. There's an argument here that this is talking about everything. I'm going to take it in Genesis here that it means man. He doesn't say good, he says very good. From Genesis 1, we're going to see something. We're going to see that man is the only creature God made whose work involves overseeing God's other creatures. Think of the universe. Think of all the multiple universes. Think of how wide they are. Think how deep they are. He made man more important than those. The things around us are made for us to understand God, that he exists. They're not to put us down and make us minuscule. And man is so small in comparison. No, he's not. He is the only creature that God made in Genesis that we know of. I'm leaving angels out of this conversation. Is that okay? Because I don't understand them in terms of their origin. And it doesn't really fit what we're talking about. So in this case, we see that man is the only one who oversees any of God's other creations. And among all creation, only man has been given the honor of overseeing things. When God formed man and woman, he used a slightly term, very good. We're the only creature, as we said, that God made whose work involves overseeing God's other creatures. Those first 2 should have been grayed out. I forgot to do it. God gave man all the tools necessary to perform his assignment. In God's words, being human then was something very good. When God made man, he made man and animals and the plants and the planets and everything else good and very good, which means that they could do the job that they were set to do. Then why? Why do we just say, well, I'm just human? Really? Human was good. Very good. Well, it's in my nature to sin. That may have a tad of truth, as we're going to see in the upcoming weeks, but not in this sense. How you answer this question is really going to be how you look at life. Because if you answer this question that you are not made very good, you've just said that God has made something flawed from the beginning. Isn't that true? I mean, isn't that kind of the conclusion that we have to get to? If you, what is it in chess? It's called the horns of a dilemma. Isn't that where you either side and you're going to lose here? Okay, well, if I take that, I lose. But if I say, yeah, I am very good, and then I don't act that way, well, then it's going to be kind of hard to blame God. We can do it, as we'll see. Genesis also made man in his own image. Go back to my elephant again. You have the trunk, and you have the ears, and you have the legs, okay? Your view of image of God is going to be the trunk. I'm just going to concentrate on the ears. It doesn't mean that your view of image is incorrect or correct, but let's say it's not incorrect. It just simply says, I'm looking at it from a different viewpoint. The other way I would often do it, the other example that I used, and I don't know why I use this, I would say, Kenny, is it a 56 or 57 Chevy that has those big things in the back? 7? Okay, that's what I had. That's what my dad had growing up. So I remember that. So in other words, if you take a part of a 57 Chevy and say, okay, it has this, and then you look at the headlights and it has this, and you look at the door handle and it has this, and you say, no, you can't look at that door handle, you only can look at the fins, right? You can only look at fins. Well, that's not looking at the whole picture. So when we look at image, we have to look at it several different ways, I believe, and I don't think they're contradictory. I think the Bible is so profound and God's Word is so widespread that we can keep learning more and more about it as we go along. But here's my point. We are made to reflect some of the glory and honor that flows naturally from the Creator. This is my view that's probably, and again, this one, every class is commentary. We understand that, I hope. We're mature enough to understand. I'm giving you the product of my study. Some of it is right. I hope all of it. If it isn't, I hope you continue to study and can show me. But here's where I'm kind of looking at this. This is why I have a different view of idols. The little idols were images. They were conduits. That's what I'm trying to get. In other words, this is what people believed. That God that I believe in works through this idol. It comes through this idol. Remember when they had the fight in, oh great, Larry, this makes no sense at all in your head. How are you going to say it out loud? Remember when they had the fight in the Old Testament? Yeah, that helped a lot. Remember, and he put all the idols, and they all fell down on their face. Help me out. I'm getting really tired. Help me out what that account was. Yeah, that one. What did those guys think those idols were going to do? Why'd they line them up? They thought the power was going to come through them. Why? Because they thought they were images of their God. Not physical reflections, but a way of sending the power through. We are images of God. Now, a spiritual God made physical things, yes, but how are we images of God in this sense? In that we are made so that His glory will reflect through us. It bounces off us as we do things, and it shows to other people. That should remind you of Moses. What happened to Moses when he came off that mountain? He glowed. Why did he glow? Because he was in the presence of God and he was reflecting it. And he reflected to such a degree that he scared the living daylights out of people and he had to put a veil on. We're not going to go the veil rabbit hole. Here's 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter. So all of us who have had that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like Him. And we are changed into His glorious image. We're reflecting Him more. It doesn't mean that we're physically changed. It just means we're reflecting Him more and more by what we do when we're doing what's good. I'm giving you a lot of terms. Sorry about that. Here's something else that's mentioned a lot. Value and honor. If I had a class to teach, if I had a book to write, if I could, it would be about honor and shame, because just an interest of mine. The greater something is valued, does this make sense? The more honor it receives? Kind of, right? He uses the New Testament. The writer uses an example. He compares something to a chamber pot. Do you remember that story? The potter and the clay? Is that the chamber pot where dishonor and honor? So the chamber pot, which you know what it is, I hope. Again, I better not say that, because if you're under 40, you don't have a clue as to what a chamber pot is. If you want to know later, ask Richard, and he will go into detail. I don't have time right now. Okay. The mourner's bench is up here. Have you thought about this idea of honor and personal worth, that it's something that only man has? Animals do not have that. Creatures do not have that. Only humans have been given the idea, the understanding of personal worth. Now that's not really profound when you think about it, because although it's also in contradiction to what a lot of people will believe, especially younger people, because I'm going to not get off the subject, it sounds like I am, because they have grown up with Disney. No, I'm not talking about anything in the news lately. I'm talking about stuff in the last 50 years, what has happened in the last 100 years. Disney has turned animals into human beings more than any other books or anything else. Animals have feelings. Animals are human beings inside of an animal, human spirits inside of an animal. They're equal with men. Think about what God said. So, when used as God intended, we reflect His glory. When misused, we damage and we shame the source. And that's what it says within the Testaments. It doesn't just say we get in trouble. It says you actually bring shame to God when you sin. This one was for my own use. I'll leave it to you to think about. How often have we skipped, we being me, I guess I had a mouse in my pocket when I said it, skipped over honor, shame, glory, and value in our personal readings and studies? How many times when we're reading that chapter and that verse, we see honor, shame, and we just skip right over it? We go to something else because honor and shame, that's old-fashioned. Or we say, oh, honor and shame, isn't that the Afghanistan where they would kill people because, they married someone they didn't want to, and that's the honor shame? It is honor shame on steroids. But if you don't believe that we have an honor shame society today, then you need to go with Ian on his trips in the evening. Because isn't their own, what's the one thing you can do? You can bring dishonor to someone. What must you do? Retaliate. You must show them that you do not. And you go, well, that's the other side of town. No. Think about the last time someone got mad at you and you got mad at them. At what level were you saying, they have attacked me? Not my belief, me. I didn't know how far we would get on this, so let's kind of go along. We're in I'm in the morning thing. We're in Genesis, the 2nd chapter. The Lord God took the man, He put him in the garden to work it and keep it. What was man's job? It says up there. To work it and keep it. What did God, I'm doing this for a reason, what did God tell him to do? Work it and keep it. Isn't that right? When God tells you something, isn't that a commandment? Yeah. So what was the first commandment that we can find? Work and keep the garden. I know it's not the first one you think about. You think that they broke the very first one they had. No. They could eat from anything with only one exception. In Genesis 2nd chapter says they did not have permission to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God even took the time and effort to explain. When they ate from that tree, he said they would die. The choice to eat would be theirs. Well, didn't they have that same choice with working the garden? Yeah, it's implied. His instructions were obeyed about maintaining the garden. Didn't he also have instructions about multiplying? Yeah. Didn't he have instructions about prospering? He told them, you multiply and prosper. And they did. They never seemed to question if the Creator had anything but their best interests in mind. But the tree is the first time that God had expressly forbidden something with an explanation of consequences. The choice to follow God would remain theirs. This is how I look at it, and I'm trying to, again, at least kind of consider what I'm trying to say, and maybe you can better understand me a little bit on some of the rambling that I do. The ability that makes man God, this ability makes man God's only creation that can choose to tell him no. Plants, planets, animals, whatever else, cannot tell God no. Man can. It is free will that's displayed. What's free will? Usually we'll go, well, free will is choosing yes or no. I'm going to do it a little different, and I'm going to explain why. It's having the power to say no. And the reason I say that is, did God make us morally empty, where we have a choice, yes, to go this way or that way? Or did he make us good? He made us good. That's the, what do you call it? The norm in computer stuff. When you kind of go there and this is the, why can't you guys read my mind? Oh, you don't want to. Yell it out because I need help. You know what I mean by norm? You know what I mean, the standard? Well, we're getting there. That's kind of tied into that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, let's just say standard because I'm losing you guys. I'm sorry. The standard is that we're to do good. That means we're heading in that God has set us in that direction. He's made us so we can do good. And so what do? We turn away from the good and say, no, I'm going to do. So again, this may seem like a minor point to you, and you may go, this isn't worth a discussion. But it is to me because it means that God doesn't make us empty, and we always have the choice between following him or not following him. Because once we start doing that, well, I'll kind of follow him, or I won't, No, he's made us so that we're made to follow him, and when we don't, that's when things go bad. Sin isn't just a breaking a law. I'm giving away something here. It's a insult to God. Think about how we made use of free will. It's a story of mankind, isn't it? The ability to choose our own path, even in those decisions we decide are of minor importance, is something we celebrate as humans. I've taught history for a lot of years, and that's a definition of history. And it's probably one that you kind of agree with, too. Can't tell me what to do. No, I wasn't telling you that you can't tell me what to do, but you can't. From the time of Adam and Eve, human dignity became identical to the power to decide for ourselves what is right or good. You want to have dignity? Then you make a decision. You decide what's right or wrong. Happiness really can only come then when you have the ability to make your own decisions. That's what happens at creation and to this day. Here's the consequence. If we believe ourselves to have reached our full potential only when we make use of our free will to do as we please, then is an all-powerful God the creator, or is he a threat? Here's my wall of facts, built tight, logically, expressly, clearly set. You have to agree with it. And I will give you that as we continue this study, they don't even realize they're doing that. We don't even realize we're doing it. Sin is that powerful. Once it gets a hold of us, it will eat away like a cancer. I brought my old 5-year-old remote. Yeah, I still have my PowerPoint remote. And I tried to use it Saturday, and it doesn't work on this one. And I felt sad. Adam and Eve received an open invitation to anything in the garden with only one restriction. Adam was the first to hear of this in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, in verse 17. We're going to stop in about 2 minutes. He apparently told Eve, since she partially answered the serpent's question about the tree in the garden center. There's an example of an inference. It doesn't say Adam learned it first, but it says Adam, and that, it doesn't say God told Eve separately. So we just kind of assume, have to be careful about whether that's right or wrong, that probably Adam is the one that told Eve, since Eve wasn't around when God told Adam originally. God, the serpent implied, was looking out only for himself. Does this sound familiar to what we just said? Eve responded not by defending God, but by restating God's restriction and adding to it. Touching the fruit, she told the serpent, would bring death. Now here's where we'll stop for tonight. These two facts. Look at Eve. Look what she does and think about the way we act. First thing that she does is she doesn't defend God by stating what he said. She puts it in a negative way. We'll die. He'll kill us if we do that. See the difference? God said we can have anything except that. We have all of this around us. But he said that's dangerous to us. That's not how she said it. She said, here's the rule. If we break it, we die. And then, for that matter, if we break it, we die, well, we better do the next step. We better not even get close to it. We better not even touch it. If it's that dangerous, we better not even touch the thing. Man right there, we'll learn more about next week. This is one of the main problems. We talk about Eve. Let's talk about Adam. Adam said nothing. This whole time, Adam said nothing. Well, I don't want to make him mad. I'll get to what I was going to get to next week. I was lonely, and God showed me that I needed a companion. This is my only companion. I'm guessing that may have been some of it. But we'll kind of continue next week. I usually stop the videos also right in the middle of a fight scene or something at school. And so, thank you.